what Justice Shah and Mr. Nariman have said of this judiciary remaining strong is really of the essence of for the task for today. And the book shows in various parts how the political executive has systematically worked to put the judiciary into this position of a supplicant. And today, of course, it is under assault. Please do not think that there is anything except a well-planned, systematic, planned assault. And it does not come just from one politician, but from an entire ideology. And that because of the objectives, as Mr. Yashwant Sinha has been emphasizing, all of us, that it is the objective, the mentality is totalitarian. And that means total control over the geographical space, over the institutional space, so that no institution will be left standing. And if they are thwarted in one move, as the Supreme Court did, sir, in the case of the National Judicial Commission, it will resume the effort through another device. And therefore, if you are able to block the political executive in one way or on one maneuver, please do not fall for what is called the delusion of reprieve, that now, oh, we have thwarted it forever. They'll come back with another device. And secondly, the time to check them is early. The time to check them is on every maneuver. Just see, sir, now what has happened. The collegium sends two names, only one is sent back. Justice Shah has said, all of you big people have said, Mr. Nariman has said, that this is striking at the heart of judicial independence. What would have been the Gandhian response? The Chief Justice could easily have said, no, there shall be no oath-taking ceremony till both names are returned. Simple. Similarly, I don't know, Mrs. Malhotra must be the most wonderful of judges, but the best thing would have been, she should have said, I would not take the oath till both of us can take it together. It's simple. If you do not stop them at every juncture, they will go on with their design. Because please understand that more institutions are felled by erosion and by termites within than by a sudden big blow from outside. And this is what is happening in India today. We are being accustomed to a new normal. Rape, children rape. और कोई कहे कि साहब ये तो छोटी सी चीज है, अभी आपके नया डिप्टी चीफ मिनिस्टर बना, उसकी पहली स्टेटमेंट, अरे स्मॉल थिंग. Advocates should prevent the charge sheet from being filed. This is a systematic way in which that witnesses should be suborned. In the Sohrabuddin case, by last count, Shekhar Gupta was telling me, 52 witnesses have resigned. You think it's happening at random? But we are being we are accustomed to this. And that is why that prosecution shall not produce witnesses, that there shall be directed violence, that there shall be such abuse that Swati Chaturvedi and others have documented. All this is accustomed ki yaar ye to hota hi hai. And in these circumstances, really, Mr. Justice Lodha has spoken with such circumspection about the role of the Chief Justice. Please remember the good that individuals can do. You have examples here, 3 examples sitting. But at the same time, individuals can do fatal harm. We saw the case of Justice A.N. Ray during the emergency. I am afraid to say, and I am not going to say with great respect, I am afraid to say that the present Chief Justice's role is of such convenience to the executive that it cannot but be something not of his design, but certainly to their design. And in the case of there is a clear pattern. It is anybody who has to go on saying, I am the master of the roster, me Tarzan. That itself shows that you don't have the moral authority. Anybody who has to say, no, I am sitting on a higher chair than Nariman, so I am bigger, shows that Nariman is much bigger than us. But that's what's happening. Justice Lodha just reminded us. Twice the Supreme Court has had to say, oh, we are the master, so-and-so is the master of the roster. Why should it be necessary? Because you have created not just a suspicion, you have created the evidence of a pattern. When the controversy first broke out with that press conference of the 4 judges, Justice A.P. Shah gave a one telling example to the Indian Express. He said, I said, you will correct me if I quote the wrong figure, but you had pointed out that since the Chief Justice had been sworn in, till that time in January, 7 constitution benches had been constituted. In not one of them was even one of the 5 senior-most judges included. The same thing in Loya's case. Sir, actually, in Loya's case, there are such infirmities. Justice Shah has pointed to a few. I could point you to many, but there will be an occasion for somebody told me that you may have to bring out a new edition even before the first edition is out. But so I would suggest that you must see the pattern of the executive, and you must see the damage that individuals can do, and therefore we must, all of you big people, senior people who are respected, Mr. Shanti Bhushan is here, everyone, Ashok Desai is here, you are respected by the judges. You must counsel, I will not say the judges, you must counsel the Chief Justice about the consequences of what is happening, because he has to take, at the very least, the present situation shows a failure of leadership. Second point, sir, never think that, Anita, you have to go on? Never think that a single step saves you. I have often had one of the most wonderful things, sayings is of the Buddha. It applies to us as individuals, it applies to countries, it applies to institutions. He says that, it's in the Dhampad, as the silversmith removes impurities from silver, so the wise man from himself, one by one, little by little, again and again. So also to save institutions, we must do it one by one, little by little, but again and again. Second point, sir, and I'll only make 2 more points with your permission, is that in all our professions, we are professionals, most of us, all of us here actually, we are not entrepreneurs, nor are we laborers, we are the middle class, we are professionals. And the fact of the matter is that their evil is done by our hands. We make ourselves available as Albert Spears. And so we must look at the regime and the situation as a whole. And when the character as a whole is of a particular nature, we must at the least withdraw cooperation from it. This is what is not happening. Because all these fellows you just mentioned about these lawyers appearing for Sohrabuddin one day, and then for Amit Shah the other day. No, sorry, for Amit Shah one day, and then for these, they are fake petitioners. I'll tell you, one of them, Mr. Shah was polite not to mention, but Dushyant Dave pointed out, a petition is filed in the Bombay High Court about this Sohrabuddin matter, about the Loya case. Suddenly, so as to prevent that, 2 petitions are filed here in the Supreme Court. Normally speaking, if you go to the Supreme Court, sir, please hear me. They say, have you been to the High Court? No. This time they said, no, High Court can't. We will see. We'll hear it immediately. And who are those 2 petitioners? One of them said he is a Bombay-based journalist. Now, it so happens, Mr. Nariman, that this person was, it's easy for me to find out because he worked in the Marathi paper of the Indian Express group. So I can locate him. And this gentleman has not been a journalist for several years now. And he has been actually the errand boy of somebody you should really try to find out. But the lawyers appear for him. It turns out, Dushyant Dave pointed out that the same lawyer had appeared for Amit Shah earlier. In one case, the lawyer had appeared for Rubabuddin, the brother of Sohrabuddin, saying how unjust, the murder must be investigated. And then he appeared for Amit Shah. देश की सेवा करनी है या इधर से या उधर से वही बात. So this business of, it is the self-serving rules of each profession. Among journalists, our rule is, no, I must give both sides of the story. So, sir, what do you feel? Sir, what do you feel? Two-side story, journalism finished. Therefore, we are perfectly neutral between the arsonist and the firefighter. The civil servant, any political executive hai, they are the elected representative. I am civil servant. I'm not supposed to be the servant of civil society. No. I am to be the very civil servant of the person who happens to be the minister today. Now, the same thing is with these lawyers. Because if you go on the operating principle that I must defend anybody who comes to me because it's the task of the judge to decide, then the biggest crooks will get the best lawyers. And what is the consequence? The consequence is before us. And there is a contrasting thing of what I quoted an incident of Ashok Desai, what he told me of his conversation with Lord Bingham. But I want to just conclude this by saying that there is a personal cost also in all this, not just a national cost. National cost is irretrievable. But the personal cost is what my great and dear friend K.J. Kanambaran taught me. He said, you don't know, there is a lawyer's disease. That we spend so much of our lives defending persons who we know have done wrong, that in the end, the line between right and wrong gets blurred for us. So that is very bad. So I will plead with you for two things only. We must all, as professionals, see the situation as a whole and take steps. It's already very late, but certainly take steps now. Secondly, the big influential people must get to the Chief Justice, not to the court as a whole for collegial behavior and so on, but for the one person whose acts have resulted in the current situation. And third, it requires saving a country or saving institutions requires the cooperation of everybody. Mr. K.P.S. Gill used to say that you can't have a first-rate anti-terrorism operation and a third-rate magistracy. Similarly, you cannot have citizens saving democracy and judges suborning themselves for commissions of inquiry, etc., for these little posts to the political executive. Just the other way also, that the judges themselves cannot save democracy unless all of us put our little efforts, make our little contributions. I am so grateful to all of you for coming. I am most grateful to our distinguished guests. Thank you so very much on behalf of